know the story of Dracula, don't we? The terrifying Transylvanian vampire who hunts the night skies for the blood of the innocent. Well, obviously that character is a work of fiction, but the guy he's based on was very much real. So, I've taken it upon myself, as I often do, to come here and visit Dracula's capital city. You ready for an adventure? I definitely am. Now, before I show you around, let me introduce you to the man himself. His name wasn't actually Dracula, his name was Vlad Tepes of House Draculaiste. I think I pronounced that right. But he also went by another name, Vlad the Impaler. Aye, this story gets quite grim pretty quickly, so brace yourselves. Ah, now see, this is interesting. You don't see things like this very often. They've got a list of all of the leaders of Wallachia. Of course, there's the man there, Vlad Tepes. Ruled on a few different occasions, as did his dad, Vlad Dracula. Well, if nothing else, they were a family with cool names. Should probably mention as well, Wallachia wasn't actually a kingdom, so Vlad wasn't actually king of Wallachia. He was what was known as voivode of Wallachia. Voivode basically just means warlord, and Wallachia was sort of like the precursor to Romania. Romania is not actually an old country. When you hear the word Romania, you think it's really old for some reason, but it was only formed in like the 1860s, something like that. So, like Germany, it's actually quite a new country. Can't all be old like Scotland, can we? Up ahead of us there, you can see the Chindia Tower. Or is it Chindaya? Who knows? Definitely not me. But anyway, that tower there was actually commissioned by Vlad himself. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's undergoing a wee bit of maintenance work, so we can't actually go inside. But don't worry yourself, because the royal court is open, and that is where Vlad would have actually run his government from. Oh, look at all that fuzzy feeling inside when I see something exciting, you know? Now, before I go inside, let me just draw a quick parallel for you. You remember in my Skanderbeg video, which I'm assuming you've watched, considering that bitch is doing numbers? Well, in that video I told you how it was customary at the time for leaders in this part of the world to send their children to the Ottoman court to receive an education and an upbringing and stuff like that. Well, that happened to Vlad and his brother as well, just as it happened to Skanderbeg. Problem is, Vlad didn't have quite as good an experience with the Ottomans as Skanderbeg did. There's not really any way of saying this, so rather than me stuttering like a moron, I'm just going to come right out and say it. According to several sources, Vlad was abused by his Ottoman carers, and that was why he went a little bit mad, according to some accounts, and that was why he ended up with an obsession for impalement. Basically, he wanted to hurt people the way he'd been hurt, you know, you get me? Okay, good, I can move on because this is really fucking uncomfortable to talk about, so let's just go and see some castles and shit, right? Alrighty, have a swatch at this place, by the way. Oofed. Well, there are no fancy frescoes, nothing like that yet. Although, I'm sure we'll find some somewhere. What have we got in here? That looks a bit... We'll go in there in a wee minute. Let's see what we've got here. Is that be able to see how big, as in how tall this place is, once we... up here maybe? Perfect. Sort of a wee bit surreal just walking around here, you know, that a guy with such a mad reputation ruled a country from here, basically. I nearly said a kingdom there, but we've already covered that, haven't we? Can we go over there? No, no. Well, I'm sure it looks a lot nicer than it did when that guy was in charge. Definitely. And not meaning to overly criticise, but I think if they had maybe put slightly more aesthetically pleasing barriers here, that might have helped with the tourism, but never mind. We are here for brutal stuff, aren't we? Now, I could tell you about the family history, about how Vlad's dad, which rhymes, died fighting against John Hunyadi, whose sword I also saw in my Skanderbeg video. See, keeping it relevant. I could tell you about how his brother, his elder brother, had his eyes gouged out with a red hot poker and was then buried alive. But sources tend to be a bit contradictory when it comes to things like that, and they often disagree with each other. So for the purposes of keeping this video on topic and stopping it going into 2, 3, 4 hours long, let's just stick to Vlad, shall we? He's got enough stories for multitudes of videos, this guy. There are a lot of stories about Vlad, often quite horrific. For example, one time there were a couple of Ottoman messengers who came to pay their respects to him, but because they refused to move their turban, obviously that's the custom there, Vlad had their turbans nailed to their heads using 3 spikes so that they could never take them off again. On another occasion, he impaled 2 monks in order to help them reach heaven faster. And he even went so far as to impale their donkey after it got upset watching its masters die. There were also other stories of where he would have people boiled alive in massive cauldrons, or where he would impale mothers and their newborn babies together at the same time. The sources even go so far as to claim that Vlad would sometimes sit and eat his dinner whilst watching people slowly die. You can understand why the guy got a bit of a reputation. Even though he was a Christian, other Christians often thought the guy was grotesque. He even went to jail for it a couple of times, but well, that didn't last very long. It feels very, very strange walking through the same corridors as that guy would have walked through. I mean, history's quite ugly, you know, it's morally ambiguous to say the least. But this guy was just different level crazy. If the sources are to be believed. I will put that disclaimer in here. You've got to remember how propaganda works. You've got to remember how lies often spread a lot quicker than the truth does. But when even fellow Christians are saying it about you, you have to start asking some questions, don't you? Ah, great. Another big step. Bye, knees. Oh, you fucker. Right. But if you thought that was bad, that's not even the worst of it. The most famous story, the one that really cemented Vlad's reputation as a bit of a madman, happened in 1462. Now, we've all heard of psychological warfare before, right? Well, Vlad sort of took that to a whole new extreme. Now, at that time, Vlad was fighting against the Ottomans, as you could probably imagine. Now, Vlad's plan, known as the night attack, was that he would dress up as an Ottoman, head into their camp at night, identify the Sultan's tent, the Sultan being Mehmet the Conqueror, and then he would signal to his men to attack, and they would either capture the Sultan or kill him outright, although preferably capture him so that he could do some really horrendous stuff to him, most likely. The plan failed, and Mehmet, in retaliation, marched here to Targoviste, but when he showed up he realised that Vlad wasn't here, so he went back, only to be confronted by a forest of impaled Turks, numbering round about 23,000. This, as you can imagine again, shocked and demoralised the Turks. I mean, who could see something like that and still want to fight this guy? Let's be honest here. Imagine seeing that 23,000 of your own countrymen, or it doesn't matter who they are, but if he can do things like that to them, what can he do to you? That was the way people would have been thinking. Eventually the Turks retreated. It's sort of difficult to comprehend that level of brutality, isn't it? I mean, there's psychological warfare and then there's that. You're probably quite rightly wondering why I'm showing you this particular room whilst I talk about things like that. Well, officially, this was the cellar. You know, and it does look like a cellar with the archways and stuff there, right? Well, local legend has it that this was actually the torture chamber. And when I walked in here and I saw these two square bits here, I sort of got the idea in my head that this is where people might have had their heads cut off. I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing things I expect to see, I'm not sure, but if you're going to torture somebody and nobody can hear them, it's probably best to do it in here. And here's me giving advice to torturers. Well, this is not how I seen my day panning out. Okay then. I know the guy's been dead for quite a while, but there's part of me that's absolutely shiting myself. Oh, I'll tell you what, it's absolutely freezing down here. Oh, thank God there's light. Whew. I say God, I don't think God exists in places like this. Whew. What is that? Gravestones? Oh, that's sinister. Oh. Oh, I tell you, this is like a fridge. You could actually keep. You could keep anything you wanted down here and it wouldn't go off. I did mention cellars and torture chambers. Well, this place would, this would definitely work for both. Oh good, there's an escape route, that's always handy. If those doors close, that's game over for me. Hey, what's up here then? And that is the last thing I wanted to see. Fuck. Right, let's absolutely get out here, man. What's behind there though? Anything? Oh, nope, 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 absolutely not. Nope, 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 nope. So, what happened to Vlad, I hear you ask? Well, I did mention how the sources were sometimes a wee bit contradictory, right? Well, some of the sources claim that he died in battle, fighting against the Ottomans, which is, you know, a fairly standard death for a man of his position and time. However, other sources claim that he was actually killed by his own men. Remember I told you how he liked to dress up as a Turk sometimes so that he could go and spy? Well, basically one night he did that and he didn't tell people about it. And a group of his own men saw him and assumed he was Turkish, and they killed him. What a way to go, eh? I don't know which of those sources is accurate, nobody does, but if it's the second one, that is a crazy, crazy story. Do you see what I see? Oh, this day just gets better and better. Well, as it turns out, that football stadium is still under construction, but I'm sure it'll be very, very nice when it's done. It looked good from a distance, the part they have already finished. Right, well, I think I've scarred you all emotionally enough for one day. Before I go, just something to ponder. They aren't quite sure exactly how Dracula died, and they don't know where his body is. Sleep well.